questions, Scott, before I let you go. One has to do with the Greenland thing. I people have been talking about this. I've been fascinated by this because whether he can accomplish it or not is almost secondary to the point of what is in his mind in talking about this. And I think part of this is this kind of recognition of the world is different. Like that, China by itself has like 3 times our industrial potential. You look at Russia; it is a major military power at this point that have shown itself to be strong enough to push back on the entirety of NATO. I think it's a certain level of insecurity, but I want to get your take. This is Trump talking about the Greenland thing.
Well, we need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran. I mean, people have been talking about it for a long time. You have approximately 45,000 people there. People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. That's for the free world. I'm talking about protecting the free world. You don't even need binoculars. You look outside, you have China ships all over the place. You have Russian ships all over the place. We're not letting that happen. We're not letting it happen.
Give me your take on that. I know this, a play for the Arctic, and those type of things, but what is your thought on this? I mean, like I said, whether he can get Greenland or not is almost secondary to the point. What do you think is in his mind on this topic?
I think Donald Trump is very much interested in creating Fortress America, an exclusive. It's interesting to hear this because this is his mind. This is sort of Russia. Russia's saying, "Hey, we have this thing called the near abroad, the former Soviet republics, and we have a very important national security interest to keep the near abroad sort of close to us." It's about national security. And that's been rejected by the West. No, you can't do that. These are sovereign states, this whole thing.
Spheres of influence, yeah.
Yeah, but Trump is about American national security interests. And that's interesting that he recognizes there's a need that we have interests that are outside of our borders that must go our way or our national security is compromised. When you talk about Greenland, we have Thule Air Force Base there that has historically served a Cold War purpose. It's linked to a series of early warning stations, radar stations that protect us from ballistic missile attack from Russia. Not protect us, but allow early detection, things of that nature. But that again, these are relics of the Cold War. We now have overhead capability that does that job and maybe even does it better. The big thing about Greenland right now is the climate change that's taking place and the opening up of the Arctic now as a region for economic exploitation. There's a lot of minerals up there, rare earth minerals and exotics and things that can be, extracted from the ground. But then who controls it? You get the Northwest Passage and all this, the movement of ships. He's talking about ships. If Russia can move ships from, the Murmansk all the way across into Vladivostok and down the Pacific, draw that line and look how short that passage is compared to how they had traditionally have to go through the Suez Canal and around. Russia controls that, and it works the other way. And China wants to be a part of that too. Now look at the map and look where Greenland is in relationship to the Arctic Circle, the Arctic Sea, et cetera. And you see that Greenland is perhaps the most strategic territory for influencing development in the Arctic. And Trump says we can't trust that with Denmark. We need it ourselves. We need to be in control of this. And and then people say, well, how dare he? Well, here's the interesting thing. Even the Danish acknowledged that the people of Greenland have a right to select their own future. And there is a contingency in Denmark that allows for not just autonomy, but independence of these people if they have a referendum, if they vote in this direction. So Trump doesn't have to militarily occupy Denmark. All he has to do is go in and tell these 45,000 voters, life will be so much better under America than it is, because there's a lot of resentment in Greenland towards the Danish government. They view that it's not taking, it doesn't have their best interests in mind. I think there's a real shot that Trump's going to come in and we're going to own Greenland by the time his presidency's done. I give it about 100% certainty that that's
You
going to
think
happen.
so?
Yeah.
You think so? I am.
You even hear the softening of the Danish position now. The Danish were, over my dead body. Trump's like, okay. Well, I mean, what we meant was that we want to work with the population there. Trump's like, yeah, we're working with them too, better than you. But what we meant, there has to be a way. There's a softening of the position. In Europe is, we're going to go to war over this. Really? You're going to go to war? I mean, the French foreign minister talking about war with America. It's like, in what wet dream, excuse my language, do you possibly think that's going to come out well for France? America, here's the reality for Europe. I'm just going to give it to them in a heartbeat. We talk about how strong China is economically, et cetera. America can shut Europe off with a flick of the switch. Okay, we own your economies. We are your economies. Your economies don't work without us. And we can outlast you in every way, shape, and form. We can just pick you to die individually, or we can kill you collectively. I'm not bragging about this. There's people like, look, Scott's become such a capitalist warmonger. No, I'm just telling you the reality. And we now have a president in place who understands this reality. He doesn't back down. He doesn't believe in a sacred unity between us. He doesn't go to Europe and weep tears because of the cultural unity between two. He goes to Europe and you see it when NATO got together.
Humiliation.
I'm America. We push people away. That's Trump's approach. This is a new game, guys. This guy's coming in with a whole new mindset, and he doesn't view Europe as the long-lasting ally. You're the adversary. And the more the idiots in Europe say this stupidity, because again, Trump is a counter-puncher. So they're sitting there saying, France, Trump's response isn't to go, oh, well, let me sit down and consider your words carefully and see if we can come up. Trump's like, really? Boom. How you like that? Yeah, you want to do it again? That's Trump's approach. So if I were the Europeans, I'd be very careful, because Trump is ready to pull the plug on NATO today and watch the European Union collapse. He's not here to preserve the European Union, and he's definitely not here to preserve NATO, and he doesn't give a damn what anybody in Europe thinks, except maybe Giorgia Meloni.
She's got. I love that woman. I love that woman. Last question. 5% for NATO. So this feels like a mob boss to me, where the guy's like, he realizes how weak Europe is. I mean, because if you think about it, when Europe is paying the 2% for NATO, well, that money is coming for weapons for us. When we blew up Nord Stream and they had to buy all that oil or gas from us, again, that's them paying 5 times more to us. Those businesses that were being deindustrialized, they came to the United States. So it's like Europe has allowed itself for a huge amount of money to be flowing out of Europe into the US, which shows a certain level of weakness. And then Trump turns around and says, okay, now I want 5% for NATO, which they can't afford. So what is the point? Yeah, it's a shakedown. So why the shakedown all of a sudden? Is it just to humiliate Europe further? What's the purpose of this?
Well, Trump will have political pushback here in the United States about NATO. And so what Trump is going to do is create the conditions that NATO can't succeed, and then confront Congress and say, this is a dying body. It's on life support. I'm pulling the plug. I'm not going to sit here and pay medical bills for this this dead body. They're brain dead. It's time to say goodbye. And the way you do that is you confront NATO with the reality that the only reason why NATO is militarily viable today is because of American money.
That's right.
And if you turn to NATO and you say, nah, we're pulling back, you've got to step up, 5%. There's not a major NATO economy that can pull that off. Germany can't. Their last defense budget was shrinking. They couldn't even match inflation in terms of this. So their military is shrinking. France, the same thing. England, it's a joke. So NATO can't do this. And the second that happens, you're going to see rebellion within the different ranks. If AFD does well in this election in February, that's a game changer right there. That's the beginning of the end for not just NATO but Europe, because they're honest about it. They said we don't want any of this nonsense. We don't want Ukraine. We want to get back to Russian gas, cheap energy, that makes our economy viable. This is the reality of Europe. It's moving in that direction as the political and economic elites that got them in this horrible situation, who sold their souls to America a long time ago, are now coming face to face with the fact that there's a new sheriff in town and he doesn't want to play that game. And they don't have a plan B. So it's be interesting to. Europe is going to be an interesting story over the course of the next couple of years.
Those governments are going to collapse. I guess my thing is, why wouldn't, for the longest time, America has wanted this kind of power projection device in Europe, this kind of American way of controlling European economic politics. And if you think about it, it's even controlling their domestic politics, not just their foreign policy. So why wouldn't Trump want that ability to control Europe in this way, even if it's not in the context of the Ukraine war?
Trump's rejecting the underlying premise of all that, which is the empowerment of NATO. To empower NATO, you need a compliant Europe. To get NATO to do the bidding of the United States, Europe has to be a compliant singularity. That's what the European Union's job is to break down anybody who might protest against what America's trying to do.
Right.
But it's a policy designed to feed a strategy that is linked to the military industrial complex and the need for forever wars to generate. Trump wants to break that. Trump has said, I don't want to do forever wars. That's not my model anymore. I'm not going to let the military industrial complex dictate what happens abroad. I want to pull back. I don't want to be the world's policeman. I want to engage economically with the economic lead, not the military lead. So it's a whole different paradigm right now under Donald Trump. And unfortunately, Jamal, I have to run. I'm
sorry. I kept you long. I just wanted to get that last one in. Thank you, man. I really appreciate this, Scott. I'm sorry for keeping you this long.
No. It was a pleasure talking. I just have certain realities that are staring at me right now that I have to go deal with.
No, I do. I totally appreciate it. I thank you. I always appreciate your time, man. Thank you for this, Scott. The one and only Scott Ritter. He's a UN weapons inspector, weapons of mass destruction whistleblower. You can follow Scott on Telegram, actually. Yeah, I'm sorry for that. I didn't mean to keep him that long. I just wanted to get that last one in.